You stand at the edge of your life's storm, the wind howling, the waves rising, and your heart pounding. Yet something inside you whispers, there must be more than this fear. My friend, that whisper is not your imagination. It is the voice of God calling you out of worry and into trust. For too long, many of us have lived like prisoners, held captive by anxiety, chained to fear, tormented by the unknown. We toss and turn at night, staring into the dark, trying to control outcomes we were never designed to control. We run ourselves weary, thinking if we just try harder, think longer, or stress more intensely, somehow things will finally fall into place. But let me tell you something today with all the conviction I have. You were never meant to carry the weight you're carrying. You were never meant to shoulder every burden, fix every problem, or calculate every solution. The God who created the heavens and the earth, the God who hung the stars, who carved the mountains, who shaped the galaxies, that God is still on the throne. And He is inviting you to let go and let Him be God. I once knew a woman who spent years battling fear. She worried about her children, her finances, her health, her future, every day, every hour, every minute. Her life was a constant knot in her chest. One evening, overwhelmed to the point of collapse, she cried out, "Lord, I can't do this anymore." And in that moment, all she felt was a gentle, quiet peace, like a soft hand on her shoulder. It didn't erase her problems. It didn't instantly change her circumstances, but it changed her. She told me later, for the first time, I realized God had been waiting all along, waiting for me to give Him what was crushing me. God does not need your strength. He needs your surrender. When you release the tight grip of anxiety, you don't fall, you are caught. When you stop trying to control everything, you don't lose. You finally win. And when you choose to trust God, instead of your fear, you will discover that faith isn't the absence of storms, it's the confidence that the one who calms storms walks beside you. Some of you listening are facing situations that seem impossible. A relationship that feels beyond repair. A financial burden that feels immovable. A diagnosis that shook your world. A loneliness that feels unbearable. You have prayed, pleaded, and perhaps even reached the point where you wonder if God hears you at all. But hear me now, God has not forgotten you. God has not abandoned you. God is working even when you cannot see Him. There was once a man who spent years trying to rebuild his life after losing everything. His job, his home, his sense of direction. He tried every option, every plan, every strategy. Nothing worked. Exhausted, he fell to his knees and whispered, "God, I give it to you." And from that moment forward, doors began to open. Slowly at first, then more quickly. He realized later that God wasn't waiting for him to try harder. He was waiting for him to trust deeper. Some of you are standing at that same crossroads right now. You've tried everything. You've exhausted your strength. You've reached the end of yourself, and that is exactly where God can begin. Let God handle it isn't a passive phrase. It isn't a surrender of responsibility. It is a surrender of anxiety. It means doing what you can, then placing what you cannot control into the hands of the one who can do all things. When a child climbs into their father's arms, they don't wonder whether he will drop them. They rest. They relax. They trust. God invites you into that same holy confidence. Not because life is easy, but because He is faithful. Maybe your mind is filled with what ifs. What if it doesn't work out? What if I lose everything? What if things get worse? But what if God is already ahead of you? What if His plan is better than anything you imagine? What if the miracle you've been waiting for begins the moment you stop worrying and start trusting? I can promise you this, worry will not add a single hour to your life, but trust can fill your life with peace. Worry drains your strength, but trust restores it. Worry closes doors, but trust opens them. Worry looks at the storm, Trust looks at the Savior. The world tells you to fear. God tells you to trust. The world tells you to control. God tells you to release. The world tells you you're alone. God tells you, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Some of you need to make a decision today, right now, not tomorrow, not next week. A decision to stop carrying what God has asked you to lay down. A decision to stop wrestling with burdens that belong at the feet of Jesus. A decision to say, perhaps for the first time in your life, Lord, I trust you with all of it. Trust is not a feeling, it is a choice. Choose it today. Choose it every day. Choose it until your fear bows to faith. And listen, when you let God handle it, it doesn't mean the storm immediately ends. What it means is that the storm no longer controls you. You rise above it. You walk through it with peace that makes no sense to the world. You discover that what once terrified you no longer has power over you. God is not asking for your perfection. He's asking for your permission to take over what you cannot do, to heal what you cannot fix, to guide where you cannot see, to strengthen what has grown weak, to lift what has become heavy, to calm what has been chaotic, to hold what has been falling apart. Let Him do it. Let Him take it. Let Him carry what has been crushing you. Because the moment you stop worrying and start trusting, the moment you release and surrender, is the moment heaven begins to move on your behalf. So today, lift your eyes, open your hands, loosen your grip, and whisper the words that carry the power to change everything. God, I give it to you. God, when you do, you will discover the truth that has carried countless souls through the storms of life. When you let God handle it, you will never walk alone. Surrender your worries to God instead of carrying them alone. For many people, worry feels like a familiar companion, an unwanted one, but familiar nonetheless. It sits on the edge of the mind, whispering questions, creating doubts, replaying every possible scenario until peace feels out of reach. We convince ourselves that if we think long enough or fear intensely enough, somehow we can prevent the worst from happening. But that kind of thinking leaves us exhausted, drained, and spiritually depleted. There comes a moment when a person realizes that worry is not preparation, worry is a burden. And the God who created you never intended for you to live under that kind of weight. Surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is understanding that the human heart was not designed to function as the universe's control center. When you hold on tightly to your anxieties, you are trying to play a role that belongs only to God. The truth is that He sees farther, knows deeper, and understands the path ahead with a clarity you and I cannot grasp. When you surrender your worry to Him, you are placing your trust in the one who already knows the outcome and has already prepared the way. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop collapsing under the illusion that everything depends on you. Many carry worries silently, believing they must remain strong for everyone else. They put on a brave face, smile through heaviness, and pretend everything is under control. But God sees the trembling hands behind the mask. He sees the heart racing at night, the tears that never fall, the hidden battles that no one knows about. He invites you not merely to lighten the load, but to hand it over completely. When you surrender your worries to Him, you are making room for His peace to replace your pressure. Worry thrives in isolation, but surrender grows in relationship. As you talk to God, honestly, openly, without pretending, you begin to see that He is not distant. He does not ask you to hide your stress or pretend you have everything figured out. He welcomes your doubts, your fears, your confusion. He listens with patience. He answers with comfort. He responds with guidance. And slowly, the grip of worry begins to loosen because the presence of God makes room for rest. Some people hesitate to surrender because they fear losing control. But if you examine those moments carefully, you discover that worry never gave you control to begin with. It only gave you pressure. Surrender, on the other hand, releases you from that pressure and places what you cannot handle into hands far stronger than yours. It allows God to take the burden you were never equipped to carry. It opens your heart to His strength, His wisdom, and His timing. Surrender is not a one-time action. It is a daily decision. Each day brings new uncertainties, new concerns, new situations that tempt the heart to panic. Each day, God invites you again, give it to me, lay it down. Trust me with this too, and with each act of surrender, your faith grows a little deeper, your heart grows a little steadier, and your spirit grows a little lighter. Trust begins where your strength ends. There is a point every person reaches in life when effort, strategy, and determination no longer seem to move anything forward. You push with everything you have, and still the door remains shut. You plan every detail, yet nothing goes according to the script you wrote. You hold yourself together with sheer willpower, hoping tomorrow will feel different, only to wake up with the same weight pressing on your chest. These moments are not signs of failure, they are invitations. They are the places where God gently shows you that human strength has limits, but His strength does not. People often assume trust is something you choose when everything is calm and predictable. But trust rarely begins in peace, it begins in pressure. It begins when you reach the end of your ability, the end of your knowledge, the end of your understanding. When you have exhausted every option, when the path ahead looks dim, when your own strength is no longer enough, that is where trust begins to take root. Trust is not born in comfort. Trust is born in surrender. It rises from the realization that God can do what you cannot, and He sees what you cannot see. Many struggle with trust because they believe it requires certainty, but trust is actually the opposite. It is stepping forward even when you cannot see the entire path. It is choosing to lean on God even when life feels unpredictable. It is saying, I don't know what will happen, but I know who is with me. Trust replaces the frenzy of self-reliance with the calm assurance that you are not walking alone. It allows you to breathe again because you no longer depend solely on your own strength. Sometimes God allows circumstances that feel overwhelming not to break you, but to shift your focus. When everything is going well, it is easy to forget how much you need Him. It is easy to rely on your routine, your resources, your plans. But when the ground begins to shake, you discover quickly that human strength can only carry you so far. In that space of limitation, trust becomes possible because for the first time you realize you cannot do it alone. And that realization, though uncomfortable, is deeply holy. Trust also grows in the moments when you look back and remember how God has carried you before. He has been faithful in seasons you thought would destroy you. He has guided you through valleys you thought you would never leave. He has opened doors you could not force open and closed doors that would have harmed you. When you remember His past faithfulness, your present fear begins to lose its power. The God who was with you then is the same God who stands with you now. There is something powerful that happens when your strength runs out. Your heart becomes more open, your ears become more attentive, and your spirit becomes more aware of God's presence. It is in your weakness that His strength becomes most visible. It is in your inability that His ability shines. It is in your surrender that trust finally finds room to grow. Faith is choosing peace over fear in every storm. Not because the storm isn't real, not because the waves aren't rising, and not because the winds aren't fierce, but because faith sees beyond the chaos. Faith looks at the same circumstances fear does, yet draws a completely different conclusion. Where fear says, this is the end, faith says, God is still here. Where fear screams, you're alone, faith whispers, you are held. Peace doesn't come when life is perfect. It comes when your heart becomes anchored in something unshakable. Every person encounters storms, unexpected news, broken relationships, financial pressures, sudden loss, disappointments that pierce deeply. Storms are part of the human experience, and trying to outrun them only intensifies their impact. Fear feeds on the unknown, the unpredictable, the uncontrollable. It magnifies the problem and minimizes God's presence. But faith reverses that lens. Faith magnifies God's power and minimizes the grip of fear. It doesn't deny reality, it simply refuses to bow to it. Choosing peace is a deliberate act. It is not passive. It is not automatic. It is a decision made in the center of turmoil. Faith says, I cannot control what is happening, but I can control where I place my trust. It is the decision to steady your heart when the world around you shakes. It is the decision to speak truth when anxiety tries to take over. It is the decision to lean into God when everything in you wants to collapse. Peace is not the absence of storms. It is the presence of God within them. Some people believe peace will come after the storm, but faith teaches that peace is meant to be experienced during the storm. Think of those moments when everything around you seemed uncertain, yet something inside you felt calm. An unexplainable calm that didn't match your circumstances. That is the peace that comes from God. Peace that surpasses understanding. Peace that cannot be produced by human reasoning. Peace that enters the heart when faith steps forward and fear steps back. Fear is loud. It imagines every worst case scenario. It tells stories of what might happen, what could happen, what probably will happen. It robs your energy and clouds your thinking. But faith speaks with a quieter, stronger voice. Faith says, even if I don't see the solution yet, God does. Faith says, even if the outcome is uncertain to me, it is not uncertain to Him. Faith says, even if the storm is bigger than I expected, my God is greater still. And when faith speaks, peace begins to rise like a steady tide. Sometimes the storm isn't around you, it's inside you. A restless mind, a troubled heart, a spirit worn thin. That inner storm often feels harder to quiet than anything happening externally. But faith reaches into those internal battles the same way. It reminds you that God cares about the turmoil inside you just as deeply as He cares about the situations around you. It invites you to breathe, to slow down, to remember that you are not expected to hold yourself together by your own strength. Faith is a continual choice. Some days it comes easily, other days it is a battle. But every time you choose peace over fear, even in small ways, your faith grows stronger. You learn little by little that storms do not define you, fear does not control you, and peace is not out of reach. Faith lifts your eyes from the waves to the one who walks upon them. Faith reminds you that even in the darkest skies, God has not disappeared. Faith steadies your heart until peace becomes not just a feeling, but a posture, a quiet confidence that no storm can erase. When all is said and done, when the storms quiet, when the questions settle, when the weight you've carried finally begins to lift, what remains is the simple, powerful truth that God has been calling you toward all along. Trust Him, not because life is easy, not because the path is smooth, but because He is faithful. Everything you have walked through, everything that has brought you to this very moment has been shaping you into someone who can finally release the grip of fear and rest in the strength of God. You were never meant to carry your burdens alone. You were never meant to fight every battle with your own hands. You were never meant to solve every problem, answer every question, or control every outcome. That was never God's plan for you. His plan has always been for you to walk with Him, lean on Him, and find peace in Him. There comes a point when the soul becomes tired. Tired of worrying, tired of striving, tired of pretending to be strong. And it is in that exhaustion that God gently meets you, not with condemnation, but with invitation. He doesn't say, try harder. He says, come to me. He doesn't say, carry more. He says, lay it down. He doesn't say, figure it out. He says, trust me. His arms are open, his presence is near, and he is ready to lift the burdens that have pressed so heavily on your spirit. Perhaps as you reflect on the journey of faith, surrender, and trust, you realize how often fear has been the loudest voice in your life. But God has been speaking too, softly, steadily, faithfully. He has been whispering peace into your storms, strength into your weakness, hope into your discouragement. And now, He invites you to make a choice that will change the direction of your life, to stop worrying and start trusting. Not halfway, not occasionally, fully. Trusting God does not mean your life will be free of challenges. It means your challenges will never be faced alone. It means you will walk through valleys with confidence instead of trembling. It means you will make decisions not from panic, but from peace. It means you will surrender what you cannot control and focus your energy on what God has placed in front of you. Trust transforms the way you see everything, your past, your present, and your future. As you move forward, let your heart remember what faith has taught you. Let your spirit remember what surrender has freed you from. Let your life reflect the truth that God is bigger than every worry, stronger than every storm, and closer than your next breath. You are not forgotten, not forsaken, not overlooked. You are held by a God who loves you more deeply than you have yet imagined. And when you choose to trust Him, fully, completely, intentionally, you step into a life marked not by fear, but by peace. A life where storms may come, but they no longer define you. A life where God leads, carries, restores, and strengthens you at every turn. A life where trust becomes your steady foundation and His presence becomes your lasting peace.